if you are an animal communicator or an animal healer, or you're a canine nutritionist, or you're someone that works with dogs in a natural way using a natural, or what we call natural modality, you are working with a dog's vital life force flow. Now, for some of you, you'll know that. That's just, okay, yeah, I knew that. But you might feel as a nutritionist, or, I'm kind of not really, am I? I'm working with food. Well, you are still working with their vital life force flow because food affects the electrical impulses of their nervous system, and nervous system is also related to behavior as well. Food will influence how their heart functions, which, as we know, is measurable as electric charges. So there's many different ways, which I won't go into completely now, but there's many different ways in which you are actually working with a dog's vital life force flow when you work as a canine nutritionist. So whatever modality that you're doing, that you're practicing, that you're supporting dogs with, I want you to know that this vital life force flow that you're working with is also behind all of canine behavior. And by being able to see and understand the vital life force flow in your dog, to see it when it occurs, to see it coming up as what I like to say is like a charge in the dog, and to understand how to support the dog to ground that charge and be in continuum so it stays, not it as in the dog, but so the flow is it stays in the flow. Okay. If you can see and understand and work with and influence that charge and that flow, that vital life force flow, you can also transform canine behavior. Now, as someone who has done every course under the sun in dog behavior back in the day, okay, in the 2000s and the 90s, I started running retreats for people and their dogs, and we would practice some modalities. Sometimes we did learn a bit of kind of canine massage. Sometimes I remember we did shiatsu once. We did a workshop in that on the retreats, but mainly we were working with meditation and supporting a dog to ground what I call their emotional energy, which is essentially their vital life force flow. Okay. When you learn canine flow, you will understand how those two things are so interrelated, that essentially vital life force flow is the flow of emotions. Now, I found that by allowing a dog to release a charge of emotion or to balance their charge of emotion, we could transform behavior without any training. Okay, it didn't mean that some compassionate training wasn't ever needed again, because quite frankly, some of it is really good fun to do with dogs. Trick training and clicker and all that kind of stuff. You can really bond and really have good fun with your dog. But I'm talking about calming a dog, reducing behaviors, supporting them if they've got any anxieties or fears. All this is related to the vital life force flow. And what I'm seeing is a lot of practitioners in modalities, some of them very, very well known, they very expertly talk about how their modality can support a dog to transform in terms of health. And then yet when they then go to talk about behavior, they mostly focus on either management techniques, even compassionate ones, or activities related to the dog's mind, and the behaviors get labeled as mental, mind, neuro pathways, all this kind of thing. And we don't need to know about the dog's mind to transform their behaviors. And I will repeat that, yet the dog's behavior is not related to how they're thinking. It's absolutely not. And I wouldn't have believed this. I honestly wouldn't have believed this, say 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I have seen behaviors completely transform on my retreats and never resurface again. Okay, I've seen that happen. And because I'm a questioning kind of person, I've gone, okay, I believe it's happened because I've just seen it. How? And I have spent the last 15 years looking into how. And why is it that we as human beings don't seem to be able to get over the hurdle of vital life force flow also being at the root of all behaviors? We are more than happy to understand that vital life force flow is related to natural health. It's related to how the body heals itself, how the body detoxes itself, how frequencies can change things within our animals and with our dogs especially. And so we will want to learn and practice and get involved with lots of wonderful modalities that completely transform ailments in our dogs, using exactly the same flow and vital life force that I have found. If we can learn to see it in behaviours, we can transform behaviours as well. So not only do we support the dog on an ailment-based level, but we support the dog on a behavioural level as well. And what's interesting, I have found, is that I sometimes have no idea that there are ailments going on for the dogs and the guardians that I work with, especially on the retreats. Now, flip it the other way, and when they contact me for help with nutrition, it's normally the other way around, and I don't know that there's behaviours going on. But by working with nutrition, I find that behaviours change. People say as a sideline, oh, by the way, he's not doing X, Y, Z anymore. And on the other side, when they contact me on my retreats and they're on my retreat or any of my retreat days that I do or workshops, people don't necessarily tell me about ailments because they're in their mind, they've separated the two. And this is what I'm talking about, we tend to do. And they will say to me, oh yes, you know, these are the behaviors that I'd like to work with. But afterwards, they will say to me, goodness me, he hasn't been half as itchy since your day workshop, because we were working with the vital life force flow, the same thing. So my message, I guess, is, if you're still with me after nearly 6.5 minutes, is that if we do really believe in a vital life force flow and in the modality that we're using, working with vital life force flow, then how about you come to me and learn about canine flow and how we can also apply that to behavior. Because yes, compassionate dog training techniques, as I said, can be fun, still can be used. We don't need, I'm not saying we shouldn't be training our dogs, okay? Absolutely not, okay? Because there are some things that it's useful for a dog to know, like, you know, the fact there's traffic outside and things like that, okay? So you're always going to need a little bit of that, and compassionate ways to train them is always going to be needed. And that fun aspect. But in terms of transforming behaviour, I have personally found that we do not need to be associating that with our dog's mind in the slightest to make any difference to them. We really, really don't. And in fact, by going down that it's related to mental, mind, neuro, we miss so much of what's really going on for the dog. And not only do we miss what's going on for the dog, but we also, and this is where you come into the next level of canine flow, you miss what the dog is showing for you energetically. And when you can see their flow and you can understand what this means, then you not only do you transform the ailments and the behavior of the dog, but you start to shift what's going on in your life as well, and your life becomes more in the flow. So there's many, many reasons to get involved in canine flow. I will put the link in the comments, of course, so you can have a look at the online course. So what I also want to share about, and I think this will be an extended video that I may make into clips. Okay, so if you're watching this as a clip, please do follow on to the extended video that is probably going to be on my YouTube and my Facebook. So canine enrichment, okay, this is a practice that we predominantly as guardians discuss as something that is tiring the dog mentally, okay? And this reframe of it actually being about an opportunity for your dog to ground their emotions and be in the flow and release any frustrated emotions that have got stuck in their body, any charge, I call it. That reframe is an opportunity for us to fully see what's happening with our dog, okay? Their whole vital life force flow and how that relates to ailments and how that relates to all the behaviors they do. By focusing on that only being a mental, mind-based, tiring them out, we are actually missing what is going on for our dog. And we're not giving our dog our full view and our full bigger picture focus, okay? So when a dog is using their mouth, they are utilizing their limbic system to ground emotions. So they are becoming more and more content each time they do that. Each time they chew on something in enrichment, each time they sniff out and find something in enrichment, They're grounding emotions. They're utilizing their vital life force flow. Also with their paws as well. So I'm even doing it as I talk to you now because I'm in the flow. It's flowing. My hands are flowing with vital life force flow. But this is what happens when your dog's using their paws in enrichment as well. They are becoming more and more content, which is why they are calmer and why enrichment has an overall effect on the behaviors of your dog. Because a dog that isn't full of charge isn't going to go and dump their charge quickly into a different behavior. Okay, and that's a very minimalist way of talking about it. If you learn canine flow, you will understand all the different aspects. But essentially, that's what's happening. Okay, so enrichment isn't of the mind, and it may be that we kind of get that really, and we get that they're content, but we don't have another way to describe it in our usual language, so it's easier for us to default to saying that we've calmed or tired the dog's mind. But actually, when we start to embrace considering it as we have got the dog to be more content, okay, it can support us to shift to seeing the dog in a different way, and we can start to see emotional flow in our lives as well. We can start to see emotional flow when we're out with our dog walking, and emotional charge as well when we're out with our dog walking. This charge of emotion and this understanding of vital life force flow offers so many solutions to behaviours that as guardians we haven't found answers to in probably 40-50 years since the Barbara Woodhouse days. We still have huge conferences just on canine aggression and vital life force flow, and being able to ground that vital life force flow, encourage your dog to, and to understand it, is a massive part in reducing aggression. And I talk from experience here, 15 years of doing this and working out why it flipping works, because I do no training with dogs. Okay, and yet I can transform canine aggression by working with their vital life force flow. I can do that. Now, I 10 years ago didn't know how on earth this was happening. Here I am down the line, and I've done so much research behind it, and I know that I can do this with dogs. Okay, so that's my video on canine enrichment, and reframing canine enrichment so we can fully understand the bigger picture of what's happening with our dogs. Okay, because there are other ways to work with them. We need to reframe how we're looking at things like that, and how we're voicing and discussing canine enrichment, because we can be empowered beings. Actually, as human beings we can be very empowered, but when we live in our mind and when we're focusing on intellectualism and intelligence and trying to project that onto the dog, we're actually not then in our hearts, and our hearts are at the root of the vital life force flow. Okay, and that's not a woo-woo spiritual thing even, it's the truth of life, that our main electromagnetism is in the heart. It's measurable in the heart. Anyway, okay, so that's me talking about enrichment. So just a very quick short aspect. So if you're watching this as the long video, hi. If you're not watching this as the long video, please do, I encourage you to watch the long video if you like what I'm about to say about dopamine in dogs. So it was recently highlighted to me that the studies into dopamine in dogs are reflecting and showing that the high dopamine that the dog feels, which is their reward-based neurotransmitter, that is actually higher leading up to the reward than when the reward actually happens. And that made so much sense to me, because from a canine flow point of view, the vital life force flow is most flowing, okay, before the reward is given. Okay, so, and it's our vital life force flow being in the flow rather than being restricted that is part of how canine flow is transforming behaviours. So for me to know that dopamine, it's almost like an attraction. A dog is feeling that attraction to something. And this is what I've been talking about in canine flow for years. That, for instance, if you've got a dog that is, say you've got dog to dog aggression, In canine flow, we would describe that as magnetic attractions towards each other to ground charges of emotion that they're feeling on each other. Okay, now I'm not necessarily saying we should allow that to happen. Of course, we're working with canine flow to support dogs that that kind of thing doesn't happen. However, to know that that dopamine is involved in that attraction towards made so much sense when I heard that. And it isn't just about the dopamine comes when the grounding occurs. So when a dog is chewing something in canine enrichment, they are grounding their emotional charge. A dog who practices canine enrichment or is given the opportunity to do so, their behaviours change. People who work with dogs in this way in compassionate dog training, they know that the dog that practices canine enrichment is a calmer dog overall and is less likely to be involved in canine aggression, for instance, to talk about the behaviour we were talking about before. And it may be that they just feel that the dog is mentally learning something. However, that isn't the case, because the enrichment has actually got nothing to do with their mind. What it's doing is it's allowing the grounding of emotions, it's allowing for contentment, and it's removing any charge of flow that was stuck within their system that would have led to that magnetic attraction, because vital life force flow is an electromagnetic measurable field that is in your dog, is around your dog and the other dog that was involved in the scenario. So there are so many ways within canine flow to shift behaviour. And whenever I hear another study about the science behind the neurotransmitters or the reasons why dogs are doing things, all it ever seems to do for me is cement for me that, wow, that's another reason why canine flow works. And that really excites me, because for many, to talk about the spiritual side of being with your dog, the heart ways of being with your dog, the soul-based ways of being with your dog, can on the surface appear woo-woo, or can appear just a different way of working with them to traditional behavior. Okay, but actually it's not woo-woo at all, because all the science points to the same things happening. It's just a reframe of how we word it. And when we do that reframe, we see the bigger picture in our dogs. We see so much. It's like the whole world goes ping, and you just see so many interactions of energy happening between dogs, between people and their dogs, between dogs and other creatures. You just see so much more, and you go, okay, how did I miss that before? And you become a guardian or a trainer or behaviorist that can see emotional flow in a dog and can work with them to reduce that emotional flow, not just with enrichment, but sort of in the moment stuff as well, that neutralizes and grounds and stops behaviors happening. And you can fully understand why that happened as well, and teach other people how to do it. So I encourage you, if you want to learn about canine flow and get involved in this work. I mean, I've been doing it for about 15 years, as I've said. If you're watching the long video, you've seen that before. But yeah, I didn't know at first how it worked, and I've spent 10 years researching and understanding. And even, like, as I said, little studies like the one that I was shown recently just cements in me that we don't have to be working with our dog's mind. We really don't have to. Okay, it's not about what they're thinking, or at least the majority of it isn't. And we don't have to work out the inner workings of our dog's mind to be able to make shifts in behaviour for them.